Staying on developments at the mining in Daba, we take you live now to Cape Town, where Xolani Mbanjwa is with the Mineral Resources Minister, Gwede. Mantashe. Xolani, a number of matters addressed already on day one. Talk us through what the minister has had to say in his latest statements.
Good afternoon, Dumi-sang, and thank you for this time. Yes, it's been a busy day one here at the 2025 Investing in African Mining in Daba. And of course, we've heard from the minister in the morning in his opening address on behalf of President Cyril Ramaphosa, and he just had a briefing with the media here, and we have an opportunity with Minister Gwede Mantashe, the Minister of the Minerals and Petroleum Resources. Thank you for your time,
Thank
Minister.
you very much.
Minister, you have just said that the comments that you made in the plenary, in the opening address, around what has been a huge talking point actually belong to the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. But you went on to say that as a leader in government, you do not believe that South Africa must be bullied, or any country that is a developing nation must be bullied in any way. Expand on that and why that is important.
A state of development must not be a basis for being bullied. Every country must be given a chance to grow and develop to full capacity without being bullied. For example, if a developed economy contributes some funds to a country, it cannot just willy-nilly take them away on the basis of its size and its economic development status. We must be resisting that with everything and try to cut our cloth according to our size, according to our cloth that we have. Instead of actually begging and running around developed economies, we must cut our consumption to the ability of our own economies. And being bullied should not be acceptable under no circumstances.
What do you think should happen going forward between South Africa and the U.S.? There are diplomatic channels that are there.
Yes, and the U.S. must use them and not just allow its president to stand up publicly and insult us and accept us and expect us to accept that because it's a big force and a big economy. We can't do that. We must resist that. We have a sovereignty that should be protected. We have a country that should be respected.
Let's talk about what implications for the mining sector, a huge sector in the country.
Yeah.
What implications for a country like South Africa, for example, that almost exports all of its chromium to the United States, all of its 25% of its platinum to the United States. Should there be any inkling of a trade war?
The biggest export of chromium is to China. That's why China is having a bigger chromium sector than us on the back of our chromium. We are raising that with our companies and say, do add value to our chromium and export it after value addition, so that we don't depend on others. That's why the price of chromium now is at rock bottom, simply because China stockpiled chrome, and when it suited them, they flooded the market, and the price of chromium dropped. And we must think of that more carefully. That applies to China, it applies to the US, it applies to the EU, it applies to everybody. We must manage our resources. We must value add them so that we don't export jobs, we don't export value. We create value here, we create employment here, and then compete in the world like any other economy.
Another important issue which comes as no surprise, Minister, you have been on the same lane. You have reiterated that what happened in Stilfontein is a criminal matter.
Yes.
And it came as a shock to those who may have not heard, the delegates here who may have not heard you say that before. But it sounded like it came from a place of being annoyed by what has been going around and the blame on your department that you are shunning blame to the police.
Actually, I'm not annoyed. I'm not annoyed at all. All I'm saying, a criminal activity is dealt with by the police. If I must go to a crime scene, I talk to the Minister of Police. If I must go to Stilfontein, I talk to the Minister of Police. They allow me to go there when I must intervene in support of the police on the technical aspect of the work. But generally, criminal activities are handled by the police. I'm very happy with that. It doesn't annoy me. It is the correct thing to do. And I talked to some people who were discussing about this thing, that it must come to our department. I said to them, then you can as well transfer cash heist to the Department of Finance. It's unheard of because it's a criminal activity. It is handled by the police. And people go voluntarily to dangerous places and get injured and die, and it becomes a humanitarian and a human rights issue. It cannot be. Crime is crime. It cannot be a human rights issue. It cannot be a humanitarian issue. It's a criminal activity.
Do you think going forward that's how the government should handle any matter that has to do with illegal mining?
I have been saying that consistently. I have not changed my mind, and there is nothing that convinces me that that is a wrong stance. It's a correct stance. People voluntarily go to a risky area. It's a choice they make. When I was a trade unionist, I always emphasize this. I fought for law to provide for mine workers to refuse to enter dangerous place. And it is provided in law. If this place is dangerous, we refuse to enter. Nobody can force us by law. Now, if people voluntarily get into a dangerous place, it's a choice they make. It's like sleeping on the rail line when the train is coming. It's not a humanitarian issue.
It's not a humanitarian issue.
It's not a humanitarian issue. It is a criminal activity.
Minister, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Minister Gwede Mantashe, the Minister of Mineral and Petroleum Resources, reiterating quite vociferously what he has said to the thousands of delegates here, that the Stilfontein issue, standoff between miners and SAPS, is a criminal issue and it should be treated as such, and saying that the United States should not bully countries like South Africa. It should never be allowed. Reiterating those words he said here earlier this morning. Back to you in studio, Dumisa.